It was supposed to be just another ordinary evening for Daniel Brooks, a single father, a man worn thin by the weight of responsibility, yet still holding on to a quiet strength that only those who have loved and lost truly understand. The rain outside the small-town diner fell in restless waves, streaking against the glass like tears the sky itself couldn't hold back. Inside, Daniel sat with his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, her bright eyes the only light in his world that hadn't dimmed. He worked 2 jobs, one at a construction site by day and another as a part-time cook at the same diner by night, but tonight he was just trying to give his daughter a warm meal, a break from the cold, and a small sense of normalcy they both desperately craved. But fate, unpredictable and mysterious, had other plans for that night. Before we dive deeper into Daniel's story, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of humanity even in its hardest moments, please take a second to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this story with others. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories like this one to life. Back to the story. As Daniel stirred his coffee and Lily played with her fries, a woman stumbled into the diner, drenched and visibly shaken. Her makeup was smudged, her hands trembling. She was dressed elegantly, a long beige coat, pearl earrings, heels that clearly weren't made for rain-soaked streets. People looked at her curiously but didn't say much. The waitress offered her a towel, and she sat in the corner, eyes distant, as if running from something far deeper than the storm outside. Daniel noticed her the way a man who had once known pain recognizes it in others. He watched as she tried to steady her hands, whispering something to herself before pressing her palms over her face. And then, without warning, her body went limp, she collapsed onto the floor. The diner erupted in panic. The waitress dropped her tray. A man shouted for someone to call 911. Daniel didn't think, he just moved. He rushed over, lifted her gently, and checked her pulse. Years of taking care of his late wife through her illness had made him familiar with medical emergencies. "She's fainted," he said, loosening her scarf and keeping her airway open. He stayed with her until the ambulance arrived, even offering his jacket to cover her. When they loaded her onto the stretcher, he noticed the engraved gold pendant around her neck with the initials AH. That night, Daniel walked home soaked, cold, and exhausted, but there was a quiet peace in his heart. He'd done what anyone should do. Little did he know, that small act of kindness would soon turn his life upside down. 3 days later, Daniel was making breakfast when there was a knock on the door. His house was modest, old paint chipping off the walls, but it was filled with warmth, a few drawings. Lily had taped to the fridge a photo of Daniel and his late wife smiling from happier days. When he opened the door, he froze. Standing before him was a man in a dark suit, polished shoes, and a calm, professional expression. Behind him was a sleek black car, the kind you don't see in small towns unless someone important was inside. "Mr. Daniel Brooks?" the man asked. Daniel nodded slowly, his heart skipping a beat. "Yes. Can I help you?" The man smiled faintly. "I'm here on behalf of Miss Amelia Harper. She asked me to deliver a message personally." The name didn't register at first, until the man added, "She's the woman you helped at the diner 3 nights ago." Daniel's mind flickered back to the image of the woman in the beige coat. "Is she okay?" he asked immediately. The driver nodded. "She's recovering well, thanks to you. Miss Harper was deeply moved by what you did. She insists on meeting you." Daniel hesitated. He wasn't used to attention, let alone from wealthy strangers. "Tell her there's no need," he said modestly. "I just did what anyone would have done." But the driver smiled again, this time with something softer in his eyes. "With respect, sir. Not everyone would have done what you did." Before Daniel could respond, Lily peeked from behind him, curiosity sparkling in her big brown eyes. "Daddy, who's that?" The driver looked at her, then at Daniel, with a hint of understanding. "Please, Mr. Brooks, Miss Harper would very much like to thank you in person. May I drive you both to her estate this afternoon?" Daniel wanted to refuse. He didn't belong in that world, a world of billionaires, elegance, and polished marble floors. But something about the sincerity in the driver's voice made him pause. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe fate was knocking again. That afternoon, they arrived at a grand mansion on the outskirts of the city. The iron gates opened slowly, revealing sprawling gardens and a house that looked like it belonged in a movie. Lily pressed her face to the window, whispering, "Daddy, it's like a castle." Inside, Amelia Harper waited. She was more beautiful in person, tall, graceful, and with eyes that carried both strength and sorrow. When Daniel entered, she stood up immediately, emotion flooding her face. "You're the man who saved my life," she said quietly. Daniel shifted awkwardly. "I just helped. I'm glad you're okay." Amelia smiled faintly. "You did more than help. You gave me a second chance." She gestured for them to sit, but Daniel remained standing, holding Lily's hand protectively. Over tea, Amelia explained that she had been overwhelmed that night, dealing with personal loss, family pressures, and the burden of running her late father's billion-dollar company. The stress had driven her to the edge, and if Daniel hadn't been there, she might not have survived the night. Her voice cracked when she said, "You didn't just save a stranger, Daniel. You saved a mother, a daughter, a woman who'd lost her way." The words hit Daniel harder than he expected. He hadn't thought of himself as a savior, just a man who'd done what his heart told him was right. Amelia insisted on helping him in return. She offered to pay for Lily's education, to help fix his crumbling house, even to give him a job at one of her company's branches. But Daniel refused every offer. "I didn't do it for anything in return," he said softly. "All I want is to raise my daughter right, to teach her that kindness doesn't need a reason." Amelia smiled at him in admiration, but there was something else in her eyes, a glimmer of emotion she couldn't quite hide. Days passed, and though Daniel had gone back to his normal routine, something had shifted. Amelia started visiting the diner quietly, sitting in the same corner booth. Sometimes she'd order coffee and watch Daniel work. Other times she'd talk to Lily about school and drawings. Slowly, an unlikely friendship began to bloom between a billionaire who had everything and a single father who had almost nothing except a heart full of love. As winter came, Daniel's financial struggles worsened. Construction work slowed down, bills piled up, and he worried about how to give Lily a proper Christmas. One night, as he sat alone after putting her to bed, Amelia called. "Daniel," she said softly, "are you okay?" He wanted to say yes, but something in his voice cracked. He told her about the bills, about Lily's worn-out shoes, about how he sometimes skipped meals so she wouldn't have to. There was silence on the other end, and then Amelia whispered, "You've helped me more than you'll ever know. Let me return the kindness, please." The next morning, when Daniel opened his door, there was no black car, no grand gesture. Just a small box wrapped in brown paper. Inside, he found a note that read, "Kindness comes back in ways we don't expect. Thank you for reminding me what truly matters." Beneath the note was a check, not for millions, but enough to pay off his debts, fix his home, and secure Lily's education for years. Daniel stood there in shock, tears blurring his eyes. He looked at Lily playing in the yard, her laughter echoing like music, and whispered, "Merry Christmas, baby." Weeks turned into months. Amelia and Daniel stayed in touch, two souls connected not by wealth or circumstance, but by something purer. Amelia visited often, sometimes joining them for dinner, sometimes helping Lily with her school projects. And slowly, Daniel began to see the light returning to her eyes, the same light his daughter gave him every day. Then, one spring evening, Amelia invited them both to her home again. This time, she had something to show him. As they stood in her garden, she revealed a small community center built in Daniel's town, a place for struggling families, single parents, and children who needed a safe space. On the plaque outside, it read, "The Brooks Center for Hope, inspired by one act of kindness." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He turned to her, overwhelmed. "You did this for me." Amelia smiled through tears. "For all of us, Daniel. Because your kindness reminded me what being human means." That night, as the stars shimmered above, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years, peace. He looked at Amelia, who had gone from a stranger to something far more precious, and whispered, "Maybe we both got a second chance." And in that moment, it wasn't about wealth, class, or status. It was about two broken souls who helped each other heal, and a little girl who watched her father become a hero without a cape. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that kindness, no matter how small, can change lives, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us spread more stories of hope and humanity. Special request, comment below what's one act of kindness that changed your life. We'd love to read your story. because in the end, the smallest act of kindness can echo louder than any fortune. And sometimes, it's the poorest man who gives the richest gift of all: humanity.